an increased use of alcohol or drugs, or withdrawing from the people around them. If you know someone who's having a hard time coping, you can help by reaching out to talk and listen. To learn more about how you can help someone in need, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-TALK. Brought to you by the state of Washington.
Yo, what's good? It's D-Money, and you should definitely check out Fresh Juice every Wednesday, 9 to 11 Pacific, right on Rainier Avenue Radio.
With pint-sized Patron, P-Treasy the Don, y'all be sure to clean your mirrors as we play brand new hip-hop and R&B from locals and worldwide.
It's ID Yourself, a.k.a. Malcolm Flex. Make sure you check out Fresh Juice every Wednesday, Pacific Standard Time from 9 to 11 p.m.
And to get those exclusive interviews that we be doing.
Sipping a brand new Fresh Juice every single week.
Yeah. Every Wednesday, 9 to 11, Rainier Avenue Radio.
Yeah.
Join Rainier Avenue Radio from 5 to midnight for Sunday evening sound sessions. Jazz from the Cabinets from Big Poppy.
That's right. It's time once again for Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy.
Sergio LaCour's Love Lines.
It's Sergio's Love Lines with Sergio LaCour. Go to the phone line. Tell her who we talking to.
Sage Prince and Just My Opinion.
This is Sage, and that's just about going to do it for the first half of Just My Opinion.
K-Fox Nightbeat with Nasty Ness Rodriguez.
It's the beat of the Fox. K-Fox Nightbeat, Nasty Ness.
You know what? You're going to listen from 5 to midnight. Just turn it on and don't stop. DJ Alibaba. The Underground Surround Sound Start Time with Paul Pierce.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Paul Pierce.
Exactly.
Yeah, like riding a bike though.
Rainier Radio. Trust me, you'll be listening the entire time from 5 to mid Sunday evening. Your sound session on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Welcome to the coronavirus pandemic. I'll take coronavirus for 100. Fever, chills.
Warm up when we get into the
Taste or smell. What is staying home and isolate? Correct. Coronavirus for 200. Inability to stay awake. Persistent pain or pressure in chest. Trouble breathing. What is seek immediate help? Correct.
Coronavirus for 500.
Crippling and potentially dead infectious disease eliminated in the United States with vaccination.
What is the polio vaccine?
Correct.
I'll take coronavirus for 700.
The Daily Double. Should I take the coronavirus vaccine?
Wait. Hold up. This is not a game. It's time for serious discussions. We have coronavirus vaccines, but not everyone is comfortable taking them. Here's the facts. Based on what has been proven about vaccines for other diseases, COVID-19 vaccine may help keep you from getting seriously ill, even if you do get the virus. Getting vaccinated also may protect people around, particularly those at greater risk for severe illness from COVID-19. We don't yet have all of the answers. Get informed, talk to your healthcare physician, and make the right decision for you. This is a message supported by the Washington State Department of Health.
Hello, my name is Pastor Derek Lane, and I live and pastor here in the Othello community. I'm vaccinated because I know how illness can hurt a community. As a grandfather, I am boosted to help protect my 3.5-year-old granddaughter who can't be. I don't want to see members of my community die needlessly. And as a pastor, I've had funerals for those who caught COVID, but none from taking the vaccine. If you have questions, need resources, or want to make an appointment, visit kingcounty.gov/vaccine.
The beat of the Fox with Nasty.
Welcome this evening to everybody, all the viewers, to Rainier Avenue Radio's Black History Month. I'll be your host tonight, Anthony Powers, with our guest speakers, Parker and Blaze.
I'm Parker.
I'm Blaze.
So tonight's theme is Black Transcendence, Stories of Redemption and Retribution. So we're each going to speak a little bit about our stories and our histories and how those are indicative of the Black transcendence and the histories and the stories of redemption. So my story begins, I actually brought a lot of old pictures with me today. I wish I could share them with the audience because they go back to the 1800s. And I know a lot of Black folks in the United States don't have pictures that go back that far of their family. But I have pictures of my great-great-grandmother, who was the first person born outside of slavery. And I had the opportunity to meet her when I was 5 years old. She was 105 at the time. And she had stories about her mother, who was born into slavery, and stories about how they used to take cornmeal and boiling water, hot water, and cook cornbread, hot water cornbread in the ashes of the fire. Her daughter, who was named Nina Jackson after her last marriage. She is the first African American secretary to work for she's the first African American to work for the post office in Portland, Oregon. Her husband, Samuel Irvin, was a center fielder for the Negro League, and he died playing baseball in a game down in Mexico. My other great-grandfather, John Bell Sr., learned how to repair shoes when he lived in Georgia. And then he brought that trade up here. And he opened up the first African-American storefront in the Northwest. And he used a lot of the money that he made from that storefront to buy land in Yakima. So when Yakima started being developed, he started selling off that land. And he ended up being one of the wealthiest African-Americans of his time. Only to be murdered because he was accused of messing with a white woman. His son, my mom's dad, was a World War II vet. And then my mom, who had me. But his wife, my mom's mother, after she divorced my grandfather, Aquila Irvin eventually, she became the first African-American secretary at IBM. And she worked her way up there and went on to write for 3 different soap operas when she moved to New York, and then had a play that blew up big in the mid-'80s in Germany. So I didn't know about all these stories when I was growing up. We grew up in poverty. A lot of my family who inherited the wealth, they messed off a lot of the wealth. And for my mom, so when her mom was still doing good, my mom refused to get help or ask for help. So we grew up in one of the roughest neighborhoods in Portland. And I ended up turning to the life that a lot of my friends were in. And I ended up going to prison when I was 16 years old. So you remember, this is a story about redemption and transcendence with African Americans. So when I was in prison, I was sentenced at the age of 16 to a 77-year prison sentence. I was told I'd never get out of prison. And back then, they actually put you in with the adults. I remember stepping onto the tier in 1994 at Walla Walla. And this is no joke. First thing I heard was somebody playing the radio super loud. And they said, "You know where you are?" Right? The Guns N' Roses, "Welcome to the Jungle." I was like, man, couldn't it be scripted better than this? And everybody who taught me, once they saw I was willing to fight, everybody who taught me about prison taught me how to do something negative. It taught me how to live the prison lifestyle. So that's the lifestyle I lived for the first 11 years. And I went in and out of the hole, segregation, isolation, over 20 times. Got into 44 major incidents. And then I decided I'm going to turn my life around. But I decided it after finding out my family history. I was in a conversation with my brother, who's also my co-defendant. And he was telling me, yeah, when Grandma used to write for the soap operas. And I was like, Grandma used to write for the soap operas. So I called her and I started talking to her about it. And then that sparked an interest in the family history. And I saw all these things that my family, black folks, did when it was impractical for them to accomplish these things. And my thought process of what's possible changed. So when my grandmother died, I made a commitment to myself that I would never get in trouble again. And I never got in trouble again after that. That would eventually lead to a group that I formed called the Redemption Project, was to get my fellow men to be better influences on each other inside of the prison system and strive to change the negative cultures of prisons. Eventually, we accomplished that, but they changed the law around juveniles, because remember, I was 16 years old when I came in. So they changed the laws around juveniles tried as adults, and my 77-year prison sentence, I ended up being released from prison. But when I was released, I still wanted that change. I still wanted that impact. I still wanted that difference, and I still believed in that. So I first started off working with youth and talking about, hey, we need to create some kind of peace treaties with the gangs. And then COVID broke out. So then I went to work with the Seattle Clemency Project. And I built out a statewide reentry system with them. And there was an idea that I had while I was incarcerated that nobody wanted to listen to. I pitched the idea to universities, nonprofit organizations, and everything else. talking about how to use data to create irrefutable evidence of the disparities in the criminal justice system and know who the sources of those disparities are, where those inequities come from. But I was able to, in 2020, after having the opportunity of being free again, to pitch this idea when I was speaking to a group of people at Microsoft on legal training. And that led to the American Equity and Justice Group, which is now a nonprofit. And we built out the system that I envisioned, and I built it out with a large team of volunteers from Microsoft. And now we're talking about building that into a national project so that we can expose the racial and social and gender-based disparities in our criminal justice system and bring about those changes. So that's what I'm doing. That's my history of transcendence. And with that, I'll pass it off to my brother Parker, the young future.
Hello, I'm Parker. What an amazing story, Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is my story. At the age of 5, I was abducted. I was living in an Ethiopian orphanage when suddenly white alien-like Westerners came and took me. The translator kept saying that leaving everything I had ever known would be just great. Shortly afterward, I found myself in a small Kentucky town, the only black boy in a conservative Christian family with 4 adopted children. I lost everything at once: my pride, my love for life, and my culture. The sudden feeling of abandonment and exposure to strange new surroundings made it hard to attach to my new parents, and judging by their lack of affection, the feeling was mutual. My parents and I had a gap of cultural understanding that no amount of basketball lessons and trips to Chick-fil-A could fill. Yes, I now had water, a place to sleep, and all the food I could ever eat, but on the inside, I was starving. I noticed that I was the only one of my 3 adopted siblings who was assigned chores and manual labor. I began to feel ostracized from the injustices happening within my own home. So one night, when my parents asked me to do the dishes, I refused, and my mom pushed me hard against the wall. I fought back by pulling her hair. My 6'4" father pinned me down, on my hurt and anger pouring out of me in words. So my parents did what Americans are taught to do when felt threatened by a black man. They called the police. I was 11. The police took me to a nearby hospital where I was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder. RAD is a rare psychological condition characterized where a child is unable to develop an emotionally secure connection with their parental figures, and as a result, it manifests into trustless relationships and unhealthy social behaviors. Children with RAD tend to self-isolate, and this defensive response makes them prone to push back. The DSL handbook states that treating RAD requires a caregiver to increase responsiveness and sensitivity towards the child. It cannot be cured by separation or tough love. You heal it with the love, compassion, and unrelenting willingness to form an attachment with the child. Instead of taking the results of my diagnosis as a chance to heal rifts and wounds, new ones were created. When I returned home, I learned my parents had told my siblings I was dangerous and must be sent away. For the next 10 months, they sent me to 5 different facilities, from institutions to group homes. Finally, they shipped me off to Whetstone Boys Ranch in Missouri. I officially hit rock bottom. Then, one muggy Missouri morning, as I was sinking in the quicksand of my anger, all the cows on the farm escaped. So the boys and I herded the cows back to safety and repaired the fence. To my right was a convicted criminal, and to my left was a struggling addict. Everyone was sweating and having fun together as they worked. For the first time, I felt a sense of purpose and belonging. And this work was not doled out as punishment, but a moral responsibility for the betterment of the community. This experience of empowerment made me feel like I could change the world, and I couldn't wait to share this with my family when my term was over. That's when I learned my parents had decided to never allow me to return home. Instead, I would be set off to yet another children's home, the Hutton Settlement in the state of Washington. I was hurt, lost, and angry, starving on the inside like before. But this time, instead of giving into those negative emotions, I began to immerse myself in the opportunities provided and took the lessons I had learned to take charge of my story. At Hutton, they value a safe home and family. They value relationships of compassion and respect. They value hope and wholeness through opportunity. And with that, I began to explore meditation and philosophy, studying the works of Emerson and Thoreau in order to deepen my new sense of life. I began trying to understand myself through therapy, which in turn helped deepen my new relationships. With the loving guidance of my new mentors, I successfully launched my first coffee roasting business. I became an active member of the Health and Justice Coffee Alliance Board, advocating for youth. I joined the varsity golf and cross-country teams at my school. I even learned how to code under Google engineers through their Code Next internship. By my senior year, I had earned the Congressional Gold Medal.
Yeah.
Not everyone gets a chance to be in an environment where they can thrive. I was able to escape the confines of my situation, and my heart goes out to the aspiring boys and girls who never get that opportunity. I've heard of countless stories of kids being adopted from these developing countries and the promises of being saved by the white savior. They can easily provide for the physical needs that couldn't be met in their birth country. But the inner needs for connection and attachment are overlooked. It's because of the ignorant hubris backed by the capitalistic society of America and the colonialistic culture that founded it. Humans are psychologically dependent on connection in order to thrive. Kids like me are forced to come to America and to the homes of these white families to have their only connections with their origins severed and destroyed. They take your holidays and make them their own. They call you by an American name. They force you to learn an unintuitive new language, and as soon you forget your identity, even your internal monologue assimilating to fit their ideals. You're soon so stuck into this American way of living that you turn into something you're not. You become an isolated anomaly, but growing up, your heart is always longing for some sort of connection. You experience racism, but the surrounding culture downplays it with sympathetically void phrases such as, "Oh, you're the whitest black person I've ever met." You struggle to fit in because you've lost your foundation amongst a population that retains their own. The very people who saved you are the very ones causing you the most pain. Through the deep levels of misunderstanding and arrogance they show, it's almost as if they don't want you to flourish. Even without concerted malintent, these actions maintain the status quo that I won't ever be them because I am black. The white race is a superior race. That's why we've adopted these kids from these developing countries. And as soon as you break away and see the disconnect, you become this monster, this child turned man. And because of the racial bias, you are untamable. You need to be sent away. I see this pattern time and time again. At Hutton, the children's home I live at, there are now 3 Ethiopian orphans, ages ranging from 8 to 11, and me at 18. We're all there because we couldn't be saved, because the cultural gap was too big for these white American parents to understand. I would like to see 3 things. Humans need a compassionate social support net for success. Understanding and support makes all the difference. Also, we need to stop dehumanizing black children by overdiagnosis of mental illnesses that allow for state-sanctioned violence. And historically, slavery contributes to the disparities within our educational, healthcare, and justice systems. And third off, we must examine differences with an intent to understand in order to help us grow as a functioning community. Much of American society views empowerment as a threat to social order and must be educated in the benefits of equity amongst all people. Now, the burden of creating true and lasting equity is upon the back of black individuals. We can no longer wait for the white savior because beneath their gaze we wither. We must liberate ourselves from forced assimilation and teach our brothers and sisters how to free themselves, for we will only find prosperity through we ourselves create, and that is black transcendence. I too sing America.
Thank you, Parker. And just for the listening audience, once we get done with these stories, one of these testimonials of sorts, then we're gonna have a dialogue for the second half. So, Blaze, you want to tell your story?
Yeah, but damn.
Yeah, right. I'm impressed. I thought he's the future.
Damn. between you and him, it's like, man, you guys is rocking heavy.
Yeah.
Damn, Parker.
Drop the ball.
But yeah, ain't no dropping the ball.
Bomb.
If you
Not the
laugh,
ball, the bomb.
Drop the bomb.
Yeah,
you
just
know,
tell your story.
for sure. I'll close it out for us. Most deaf. My name is Vidal Lee Carter Vincent. You know, that's what my parents named me. They actually named me after Vidal Sassoon. They thought the name was filthy. You know, I was born in 1986, May 11th. You know, and just, you know, when we talking about history and all that, you know, I don't know a lot of my family tree like Parker or like Anthony was talking about. But I just want to give you some historical context, right, with the American, you know, experience of being black from the diaspora, right? So, you know, 86, you already know, it's, you know, explosion, crack cocaine, hip hop, you know, basketballs blowing up, Jordan, you know, Magic, Bird, all these constellations. You know, I can just imagine me growing up in that area. I was born in North Carolina. My mom is from Seattle, Washington. My dad is from Greensboro, North Carolina. They met in California when my dad was a Marine stationed there. I was born in North Carolina, so my mom came down there. I'm their oldest son. You know, my mom had a daughter that was 5 years older than me. Alice with another. She has another dad. And I also have a brother who's 14 months younger than me, you know, back to back. So out of all my siblings, I got a lot of siblings, but me and my brother is the only one that share the same mom and dad. So we were always together all through our lives. Just to fast forward, because we're talking about redemption, you know, we're going to talk about the struggle and the American experience. You know, I spent half my life in North Carolina with my dad raising me as a single parent, you know, my formative years from 9 to 14. And then I spent half my life up here, you know, from 5 to 9 with my mom. And then I came back up here when I was 15. And so where I stayed at in the Central District of Seattle, you know, in the 70s, it was 74% black. Fast forward now, it's 15% black. You know, gentrification. One of the things that was going on in the 90s was this program called Weed and Seed. You know, it was a federal funded program to target so-called violent offenders and drug sellers and, you know, simply weed out the individuals from that community, the black folks, and seed services, which essentially was white folks, because obviously these services wasn't controlled and ran by us. You know, obviously 15% black now, right? And so where I stayed at in the Bryan Manor on 19th and Yesler in the Central District, we stayed in low-income housing. In fact, my mom still stays there. She's been staying there since 92. They just gave her a plaque, Mrs. Bryan Manor. She's still there. She's like the only person that's still there that I know. And so, you know, it was the epicenter for everything that was going on in these under-resourced communities. You're talking poverty. We're talking addiction. We're talking gun violence. You know, and the gate to my apartment complex, 19th and Yesler, is a T-bone corner. And that's where all the action was happening. Drugs, prostitution, violence, you name it. You know, I didn't have to go up the street to, you know, really be influenced and affected by all these things that happened in so many of our communities that were under-resourced due to, you know, the 80s Reaganomics, due to these hard-on-crime policies that happened in the 90s, you know, 3 strikes, due to, you know, even our Washington taking off parole in the early 80s and going with these determinate sentences. And then these drug laws, you know, really going hard on crime with this so-called war on drugs. So to make a long story short, you know, at the age of 15, I was super gifted academically, you know, straight A's, honor roll. You know, when I stayed with my dad, he made it a point for me to stay in school. My mom always encouraged me and my siblings, you know, to be academically gifted, reinforced, let us know we were smart. Even when I was little, I remember she said I could be president one day, right? And really meant it. You know, so when Obama did that, you know, I wasn't really surprised. I remember my mom used to tell me that. But so, you know, I got influenced and got to doing the things that was in my environment, you know, whether it was smoking weed, drinking, you know, peddling drugs, etc. Right? Seeing all this violence around me, you know, made us feel like we needed to protect ourselves, you know. And so to make a long story short, at the age of 17, along with my brother at 16, you know, we were charged and arrested for attempted murder and drive-by shooting and 2 assault twos. They accused my brother of shooting somebody and accused me of being with him. And they said my presence encouraged them to do it. And so I was charged and ultimately convicted of attempted murder. And they also had these two children pick me out a photo lineup and said I fired a shot near them. And I got 2 assault tools for that. And ultimately got sentenced to 366 months, 30 years. This is February 2004 when I was 17. And, a lot of different irregularities happened in this case. The so-called alleged victim who got shot didn't come to court. They used this statement saying that my brother shot him and I became a suspect. They also had a jailhouse informant on my brother who they had us locked in the hole. So when you're underage in the county, they put you in the hole, 23-1. And so for a week, they slid this guy in the pod with my brother. And he had informed on people earlier. He had informed on people earlier that year on a murder too. So this is his routine. They put him in the pod, they pulled him out. He filled in all the holes to the prosecution's case. There wasn't a victim that came to court to testify. The jailhouse informant said we threatened to shoot his mama's house up. The suspected vehicle was clean. There was no evidence in it. The jailhouse informant said we went to a car wash and cleaned out all the evidence. We had alibi witnesses that testified that we were somewhere else that day. Jailhouse informant said, we was confident we was going to beat it because my brother said we was going to have somebody come in and fabricate evidence. And so when all this stuff was going on, I'm pretty smart, but when I'm in this courtroom, it's just all going over my head. And I'm not trying to figure this out. I don't really understand what's going on. They railroaded us, right? It's like a bully, right? So to make a long story short, from the jump when I'm going up to get sent up to prison and all that, and I already got people that I already know from my community there, I'm already learning about my Sixth Amendment right to face my accuser. I'm getting case law. I'm like, yeah, I'm a fighter. I'm like, all right, the court is going to see these constitutional violations. They're going to iron it out. So I go in, there's already people from my neighborhood that's here. And one thing that I had was different that when Anthony talked about is see, when he came, everybody was trying to show him to do the wrong thing. But see, guys like him had evolved. So where I came from, like in Seattle, there was a truce. Everybody who was older was encouraging the younger people. They already did the learning curve. They already went through the hard part. They already matured, right? And so they're like, hey, they encouraged me to, be myself, educate myself, do the right thing, try to get up out of here. So I shout out to, Anthony, because that's where the magic start happening when I link up with him later on in the story. So, it wasn't always, I didn't adjust necessarily right with prison. I come from an environment that's highly aggressive. I wasn't necessarily the bully, but I'm the one that'll fight the bully, stand up, right? So, the first 30 months I was incarcerated. I did 15 of it in the hole, solitary confinement. And, it was a very transformative period for me because it got me thinking about like my spirituality. It got me tapping into my mental, and it got me, between me always fighting for my liberation, but not also just fighting for my spirit, fighting for my soul, and really coming into myself and realizing like what my deeper purpose in life was, and, after doing that time and getting out, I spent a lot of time in the law library, started working in the law library. Ultimately, over my 18 years in prison, I spent like 4,000 hours in the law library trying to figure it out. So it's like these 18 years that I did in prison, it was like I never just did 18 years because I was fighting to get out. So I always was fighting for freedom. I was always right there at the door. I never stopped fighting. There was like 18 months out of the whole 18 years where I didn't have something in court. So I was fighting. So one of my keys to transformation was that, really trying to understand the law, understand the system, but also education was big for me too. And like Black history and understanding the struggle and connecting, prison industrial complex and connecting, how, juvenile Black boys are 28 times more likely to be tried as adults than whites, in Washington state, starting to understand like the system, how it was designed, and it's war on drugs, how everybody be using drugs and having these issues, but they target our communities. So to make a long story short, to fast forward, I meet Wale or I meet Anthony Powers, and he's like, hey, we was in Toastmasters. He was like, hey, I got something for you. He was like, how would you like to join this pilot program I started called Redemption? And I'm like, bet. To make a long story short, I was one of the first 9. We created a program in there by us, for us, to help better ourselves. And the main vision was, to change the culture of prison.
So with that, just for the viewing, the listening audience, we're about to go to break, but we're going to have some very, very intellectual and intense dialogue about what we can do as a community and some of the historical things that have this ebb and flow. So when we come back, we'll be getting into a more deep conversation amongst us.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not shouting "Badia" at city council meetings, I'm listening to rainieravenueradio.world.
This message is brought to you by Public Health, Seattle and King County, the Washington Department of Health, Washington Chapter, AAP, and Within Reach. No matter where your classroom is, whether in person or online, routine vaccinations protect your child from serious diseases like measles, mumps, and chickenpox, and they keep your child safe, healthy, and thriving. Need help finding a provider? Visit parenthelp123.org or call the Help Me Grow Washington hotline at 1-800-322-2588.
Kind of nonsense conversation we're having here.
The Neon Ghost Show. The Neon Ghost Show. Right here on Rainier rainieravenueradio.world.
Right about now.
rainieravenueradio.world. I'm so tired. I have to pee.
This is Big Poppy, host of Jazz from the Cabinets. Join me each week for a listening tour of the first century of jazz, an eclectic mix of Dixieland, big band, cool jazz, bebop, contemporary jazz, world jazz, all jazz in all forms. That's Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy on Rainier Avenue Radio, streaming worldwide on rainieravenueradio.world.
Welcome to the coronavirus pandemic. I'll take coronavirus for 100. Fever, chills, shortness of breath, loss of taste or smell. What is stay at home and isolate? Correct. Coronavirus for 200. Inability to stay awake, persistent pain or pressure in chest, trouble breathing. What is seek immediate help? Correct.
Coronavirus for 500.
Crippling and potentially dead infectious disease eliminated the United States with vaccination.
What is the polio vaccine?
Correct.
I'll take coronavirus for 700.
The Daily Double! Should I take the coronavirus vaccine?
Wait. Hold up. This is not a game. It's time for serious discussions. We have coronavirus vaccines, but not everyone is comfortable taking them. Here's the facts. Based on what has been proven about vaccines for other diseases, COVID-19 vaccine may help keep you from getting seriously ill, even if you do get the virus. Getting vaccinated also may protect people around, particularly those at greater risk for severe illness from COVID-19. We don't yet have all of the answers. Get informed, talk to your healthcare physician, and make the right decision for you. This is a message supported by the Washington State Department of Health.
You're listening to rainieravenueradio.world. Check us out on social media. Facebook and Instagram, rainieravenueradio.world, and on Twitter at rainierav.radio.
10, 9, 8.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio, Black History Month. Today we're speaking about Black transcendence, redemption, and one of our guests is the young Parker, who's an all-star in the making, as well as Blaze. I'm Anthony, your host. And right before a break, we were talking about some of our stories. This half hour, we'll be talking about, what it is that we can do. Some of the historical ebb and flows of the movement and how those who oppose the movement always seek ways to sabotage it. So we're going to give Blaze a few more minutes to wrap up his story or to finish out his story because we ran short on time before the break. So, Blaze, could you continue, please?
All right, most definitely. So, I left off when the magic started. So, me and Anthony, we've been cooking. And so, when I met him, like I said, I met him in Toastmasters, and he was the vice president of education. And so after he see me do my thing, see me strive to get my public speaking, my communication, leadership skills up, he seen something in me, seen the greatness in me that I was striving to be. And he said, how would you like to join this pilot program that I created? That we're going to create ultimately, right? And with the vision of changing the culture of prison. And so, the Redemption Project started, this foundation was a self-awareness class. It was based on 5 phases. Getting to know yourself, knowing what's good about you and reinforcing it, understanding some of the negative things about you and how to eradicate it. The second phase was family ties. really understanding how we connect with our families and strategies, irregardless of our incarceration, and understand how we related to our families in the past, how we relate to our families now, and how we strive to best relate to our families in the future. The third phase was work ethic and responsibility. Just talking about whatever you do and being responsible and being on point and, whatever type of occupation or role that you take, right? And then the fourth phase was coping with incarceration. And, one of the key things with that was conflict resolution. We would definitely role play out scenarios that would cause violence and, really visualize us handling it in the best way possible, with a forefront recognizing what we got to lose if it goes the wrong way. And finally, it was reentry. We believe when we're on the inside, reentry starts the day that we're in, always preparing, becoming the person that we need to be free. So ultimately, this started off with 9 of us. First 2 years, there was like 600 graduates. The people that was graduating start facilitating the class. And this class was just by us, for us, and there wasn't any type of accolades other than us recognizing our growth with each other. But what ultimately, fast forward, it got recognized by DLC. This program was created, was sent all across the state. Anthony Powers either went to multiple institutions to give them the culture, and now this program is in there in which people can take and get good time and get out more sooner than later. So that's some of the magic that we did. So doing that, growing as a leader, I also took on other roles. Ultimately, I became the facilitator of the Black Prisoners Caucus Stafford Creek chapter. And the Black Prisoner Caucus is a incarcerated-led Black organization in which we challenge, structural racism, speak truth to power, engage legislatively, and link up with our community and, work on rehabilitation, work on reintegration and all that. And then, also did my legal advocacy and, not only trying to get myself out, but also helping others get out. I can, between like 3 people I help get out, help reduce their time in like 70 years. Alone, just between 3 people along with other individuals. So fast forward, I just got out January 10th. After serving 18 on a 30-year sentence, I got re-sentenced based on Blake, which ruled that our drug possession, which we're going to get into, charge is unconstitutional. They also took my youth into consideration, took all the things that I was doing, took my community support. And me and my brother got out on immediate release, and so I think, and what I'm doing now, I work for the Seattle Clemency Project with Anthony Powers in the reentry division. And, I'm simply doing the things that I grew to do on the inside and bringing it on the outside. And so that's where we at right now.
It's about, it's one of the things I used to say when I was inside was the cure is the opposite of the poison. And what I mean by that is, if you get bit by a snake, right?
Yeah.
How do you get the cure for the snake bite?
The doctor.
What's that?
The doctor.
Yeah, the doctor, but the doctor gives you anti-venom.
Yeah.
The doctor has to get the anti-venom from another snake. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So being that we lived a lifestyle that was counterproductive to our own communities, we know that lifestyle. So a lot of times, rather than ostracize people who used to be incarcerated, you could actually tap into them so they could be part of the solution to some of the things that avail our communities. Now, when we talk about the ebb and flow of the movement, right? We talk about the ebb and flow. I could start back even further, but even just starting back at like the Emancipation Proclamation. What was the response to that? Black codes, right? Then you had the Civil Rights Act of 1866. What was the response to that? Jim Crow. Fast forward, it keeps on going and going and going. I mean, a couple years ago, it was George Floyd. Everybody's in the streets. What is it now? Oh, black people are getting more violent. They're on TV testifying that. They're actually saying those words. Black people are just more violent, right? So there's always this ebb and flow of reform, so-called reform, followed by mash on us. But one thing we can do, and one thing I want to discuss with the panel here tonight, is history repeats itself. So how do we take the lessons of history so that it doesn't repeat itself against us? If history repeats itself, we could just look at history to know their game and know how to oppose it. So, floor is open. You was talking about some of the drugs, young Parker, and this is one thing we were talking about in the lead up to the show. He's a bridge to some of the things that face our community, because people are always trying to find ways to create wedges in us, right? You ain't black enough, right? Light skin against dark skin, right? Now the thing is African against African American, You know, oh, you didn't go through slavery, right? But we're all going through the systemic racism. This is a brother who was born in Africa, but he wasn't raised amongst Africans. He was raised as being just a black man in America, right? So as long as we're focused on these things, I think it's going to create more divisions amongst us, and the floor is yours. Let's discuss.
Oh yeah, sure. I think Anthony said this a little while ago, and like how you have to first know who you are and work on yourself, so then you can help other people. I think that people almost misinterpret that, and they just want to go help right away without understanding how to help. And the first step is helping yourself. It's not selfish. It's a part of the bigger picture, and yeah.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about, and I'll get into that in a second. Because just remind me, that's you know, I'll elaborate further, but I think Blaze was about to say something.
And yeah, I add on with Parker. It's like, you know, I like to call it a beautiful struggle, right? And throughout history in this struggle, right, is those who had the most adversity that overcame, you know, through their lived experience, was able to take those strategies and scale them out and give them to the brothers and sisters for them to understand the struggle. So we know the historical struggle, but we got something going on in Washington right now, like we talk about with these drug laws. Yeah. You know, our simple possession law is now, it's been rendered unconstitutional. And it was rendered unconstitutional because our state Supreme Court recognized that our law was strict liability, which means you had to have no ill intent. If you just simply got caught with drugs, it was a crime. You know, and usually when they create crimes in America, they got, I hate to get technical, but we got to get technical so y'all can know it's important because it's how they keep us in the dark. When they create a crime, you got to have two elements. You got to have an act, and you got to have the mind state. You got to have a guilty mind. One of the, like a good example would be like murder, right? Like if you're driving down the street and you actually accidentally hit somebody with a car, right? You know, that's not murder. That's manslaughter, right? But if you're driving down the street and you see this person, you're like, I want to kill him. I'm going to kill him. And then you hit him. That's murder, right? So it's a guilty mind. So what they had with us is with these drugs, as we all know, and now with the decriminalization and all that, and we understand like drug substance abuse is that, you know, simply possessing drugs is not a crime. But in our state, it was. And we're the only state in the nation that had that, and they ruled it unconstitutional. So for the last 50 years, all the simple possessions are being overturned, right? And so with this is all the damage in seeking to undo it and all the remedies. I got brothers in prison right now. So like, for instance, like I said, I had a drug possession. I'm ending right here. Don't give it back. Yeah. But I had a drug possession. They vacated it. I went back to court, and then it crossed over with me being a juvenile trial as an adult. So when I went back for resentencing, I was sentenced to time served. Now, mind you, I originally filed for resentencing in 2017. So if I would have got it back then, I might have got time served. The point I'm trying to make is this. There's individuals that are incarcerated right now that no sooner than they get back to resentencing, they're going to get out, right?
Yeah, and also, you know, when it comes to these drug laws, there's also vastly disproportionate. But a lesson in there for us is that they've used this to incarcerate our whole communities.
Absolutely.
A lot of that 74% down to 15% was not just gentrification, but it was decarceration. I mean, incarceration, right? Incarceration, right? So how do we, as a community, how do we find ways, you know, because the drugs have always been used against us because people like quick money. I like quick money, but I don't like illegal money because I ain't trying to go to prison, right? So, but if I can make some fast money that's legal, hey, come on with it, right? So how do we actually start just envisioning things and educating our youth and bringing ourselves up to speed about quick money, good money? There's 1 million tech jobs open in America right now. 1 million. You got free from the Google training, right? Yeah. I set up a program with Microsoft where they're teaching African American youth coding. It was a $15,000 class. They did it for free. So, you know, how do we get more educated in the tech world so we can get some of these million jobs that in large part are six-figure jobs? Trade jobs, plumbing, electrical, right? When people like to do stuff hands-on. These are six-figure jobs. So instead of chasing that fast money, trying to sell drugs, how do we as a community start actually educating ourselves on the jobs that can actually have us staying out of prison and getting everything that we're seeking while we're selling drugs? Right? Because the drugs are put into our communities to get us locked up. We fall for the whole bait. We already know the stories. Throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they were the ones putting the drugs in the community. And then we get punished for selling what they put in the community. They give us the game, and then we get locked up for the game. So, we need to really be mindful and conscious of educating each other and really looking at legitimate ways that we can make money, not operate off the sense of scarcity. Like there's not enough resources, but knowing there's plenty of resources out there if we just take the right approach. So, Brother Parker, I thank you for pointing out that we had a discussion the other day. It's something that it's been lulling in my mind for like a while, and then it finally clicked the other day. I had read something that I found was profound. It's back in the 90s. And it said, if you want reform, reform yourself. Reform yourself first. Then after you work on yourself, work on your household. Then after you work on your household, work on your extended family. Then after you've done that, focus on reforming the community. And a lot of people want to make a difference, but they don't want to take the steps. We hear a lot of people, they talk about lived experience, and they don't talk about just people being in prison. They talk about people living in certain neighborhoods, and they say we need the voices of people with lived experience. But the problem is some of the people who are going forward are phase 1 people speaking in phase 4 positions. They're speaking for community when they haven't even worked on themselves. They haven't worked to help reform their family. And now when you work to reform your family, your household is more likely to have the same values as you, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's more likely to have the same values. So when you work on your family, it teaches you how to work in a work environment, because your work environment is more likely to have the same values. And when you learn how to work with your extended family, it's more likely to be diverse views, diverse political views, social views, even religious views. So when you learn how to work with your extended family, that's teaching you how to work in community. So you can see the wisdom in taking the steps before you try to be on the forefront, right?
Yeah.
And then after you go through those steps, helping the people who need to work through those steps. But we need to have the right people out on the forefront who've gone through those steps to be authentic voices for us so we can make more progress and we're not sabotaging our own growth.
Yeah, I can feel that. I think it comes to your values, right? And like what you prioritize in your life. So, it always starts with self, because even if you go phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, you still got to be on point with yourself.
Yes.
Right. So it starts with, do you have solid values?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have a clear purpose, or does the world and everything make you deviate? Mm-hmm. Right. So I think it's like, if you find your calling, find your passion, right? I think that's important, because that keeps you grounded and it keeps you focused, right? So if I'm always myself every day, then my family see it. I ain't got to just talk about it, I be it, right?
Yeah.
I emulate it.
100%.
We talk about brain science a lot. Your brain, 80% of your brain is devoted towards the visual.
Yeah.
So it's the example, the representation that you give. So I think that's important. And like you said, I think when you really are caring about your family, you prioritize your family, then like you said, these values take on. And that's the beautiful thing about our family and the kids, the babies being the greatest, because giving them what you are, it levels them up. They stand on top of you. That's why, and if you look at the Black experience and those who were the greatest, it only took their parents to be there to nurture one generation for us to be billionaires, for us to be the best basketball players in the world, for us to be the best business players in the world. It only take one generation for you to focus on your family and get your kids grown all the way up to be great.
And not only that, but look how when I found out about my family history, I didn't know about it when I went to prison. Because when I found out about it, I was like, oh, anything's possible.
Absolutely.
So even when we were doing the redemption, we were talking about, think about the magnitude of that, right? We're talking about changing a culture.
A prison.
That's been there for decades and did it.
And talk about it.
Right?
We gotta talk about that.
Yeah, and people didn't believe it was possible. People didn't believe it was possible. But I knew what my family did. I knew what my family did personally. I knew that when my great-grandmother went to apply for the post office position in Portland, Oregon, her friends told her.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters, Black folks. They told her, why are you applying for the post office? They don't hire Black people. Right? And she said, well, there's only one way to find out. And if I don't go down there, I ain't going to find out. And she went down there and she got the job. Right? So when we were doing redemption and we were seeking to change the cultures of prisons, there's so many people telling us this ain't possible. DLC staff, other people in there with us, people asking us what's the point. But we did it. We set records for low violence. They were so convinced that it went all the way to the top of the Department of Corrections. They sent me from the cushiest prison in the state to the most violent prison in the state. When I got there, the superintendent there told me, he said, expect a riot or staff assault in the next couple of weeks because we have one every 4 to 6 weeks for the last 6 years straight. And my response to him was, that's your whole reason for bringing me here. So we ain't got all that. They didn't have another one for the next year. They had one 2 weeks after I left, but that's all.
Well, why is that though?
Yeah.
Why was that?
Yeah, because they tried to start switching it up. You know what I'm saying?
Talking about why was it like what like why how come you touching down? What caused that?
So me touching down, I went in there with a strategy, right? My strategy was a multi-part strategy. It was to reach out to all the people with influence because I was known throughout the prison system and actually just say, hey, look, man, we've been tearing each other down. We've been negatively influencing each other, and all it is really just destroying us, right? We destroy our own communities because we influence each other, stay in the life of crime, then they get out and then they come back, right? So then I did that. I started a newsletter there I could put out the positive message and it reached everybody in there, and then try to get as many people as I could signed up in the shortest amount of time getting the classes started. But I had also read a study on incentives, and it said one of the most effective means of an incentive is when you give somebody something and say, I'm giving you this because of this, right? Mm-hmm. So we actually put it out, and I told the administration, I said, hey, let's give everybody a movie and some popcorn and say, we're giving you this because there hasn't been any riots or staff assaults lately, right? And they're like, what are you talking about? There was just one 2 weeks ago where 40-something people was injured, right? I was like, that's not the point. You're not rewarding them for the behavior they're doing. You reward them for the behavior you want to see. So they did it, and then a bunch of people were complaining. Popcorn should have had some ranch sauce on it, right? Like, seriously, right? So they thought it was a failure. I said, no, it's not a failure. Everybody's talking about it. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you just have to have the vision.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But you see it in the results. Yeah. So for those of us who have been doing this, for those of us who have been community organizing, Rainier Avenue Radio gives voice to a lot of this stuff. We need to acknowledge our own trauma. We need to acknowledge how we're hindering our own growth and progress a lot of times, and to come together as a community, identify these things, and then find out ways that we can get over it. Because we can get over it a lot quicker if we're working together as a community.
Yeah, let me add on to that. I think, one of my experiences, like when you're changing the culture, a president just changing the culture, it's like at the end of the day, everybody want a psychologically safe environment.
Yeah, exactly.
So, coming into prison is an assumption you got to get down.
But people want that out here.
Yeah, exactly. People want that. That's what I'm saying. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, well, if you explicitly are saying that, you come in peace, right? You explicitly say, hey, and then especially when it's relevant, when it come from somebody that come from where we come from, right? Yeah. When it's like you said, you get the hitters, you get the OGs, you get the
Because I believe you can accomplish a lot more when you believe in it. The young brother, Parker, he was saying he wants to go to Stanford Business School. Anybody out there at Stanford Business School? Just, young brother's trying to get in. So, but, you really have to, speak it into existence, man. And I usually don't talk about finances, right? I'm kind of like a rich white person when it comes to that. No, I wish I was rich. But I believe in putting out your goals, right?
Absolutely.
Within a year and 3 months of me getting out of prison, I had bought a new car and a $500,000 house. But I said before I got out what I wanted to do. I set out my goals and I believed in it.
I'm trying to get that house right now.
So you talking about you want to get into Stanford Business School? Believe that, bro, and go for it.
100%.
Don't let nobody tell you can't do it. Because I've seen too much. And I was inspired by my people, but my people is all our people. Because there's so many black stories. There's so many things. I didn't know about Black Wall Street till a few years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's so many things that we've accomplished as a country that's been hidden from us. And when we find out our own greatness, right? Then there's nothing that can stop us.
And yeah, I want to speak on that because that's really part of my liberation, right? Like, I got out on immediate release. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm going for my resentencing, I didn't really think about immediate release with no probation, mind you. I'm not on community custody or nothing. I'm free. I'm free, right? No surveillance or nothing, right? But I didn't think about doing that, right? Mm-hmm. Until, because like I said, I got out in January, but I didn't think about doing this until July. Yeah. When my younger partner that was in the PPC with me, and from the same area as me, he got resentenced. Yeah. And he got resentenced to immediate release, no community custody. And I'm like, hold on. So I got the pacing in my cell. I'm like, hold on. My guy Weez. I'm like, he got resentenced on a Monday and walked out on Tuesday. I'm pacing. I'm like, hold on. Hold on. Where all this? I ain't never seen this happen before. You can do that? And mind you, I'm trying to get me and my brother out. Mm-hmm. So then I got to working. And had a lawyer's co-counsel and made sure he say, hey, tell him I need you to say this. Mm-hmm. Make sure you say this. Do all your legal stuff, but make sure you say this. And to make a long story short, on January 10th, 2020, we got resentenced to immediate release, time served. But like you said, it's an exposure to the idea. So that's like a small, extraordinary level, but it's like understanding your history. That's what helped me in life. Every time I see somebody do something, then it's not a dream no more. Mm-hmm. It's like it's an option.
It's the 4-minute mile.
The 4 minute, exactly.
Right.
Break down the 4-minute mile.
Yeah, like, the 4-minute mile. For the longest, people couldn't beat the 4-minute mile.
They said you'll die.
Yeah. But the first time somebody did it, then all of a sudden, all kind of people start doing it. Right.
Start doing it.
Yeah.
It's all types of sport records. It's like that.
One of my favorites is the one in Australia, the week-long race.
Yeah.
Right. And then the old man was running it. Right. And he was just going super slow. And everybody was laughing at him. He was eating his little carrots, drinking his little water, right? And he came in first place. Now, when he came in first place, he beat the record. And everybody's like, this is amazing. It's like, what did you do? Did you take less breaks? And he said, breaks? You could take breaks? Right? Next year, a bunch of people beat his record. Next year, a bunch of people beat that record. Yeah. When you change what you think is possible, we can accomplish anything.
And being exposed to it.
Exactly.
It's just being exposed. Once you be exposed to it, it changes your mind. It opens it up. And so that's one of the things where we come from. Like where I come from, them under-resourced environments, that's our issue. We don't be exposed to stuff.
We look at everything from a sense of lack.
Yeah.
We can't collaborate because there's not enough for everybody to go around. Yeah. There's plenty.
But we're in a new age now. Like with this technology, when we create our own content, now we can expose each other to this stuff. We can share this information.
And then to touch up on your goals, I mean, well, I'll just add on to it. But like with your goals, and then you said earlier, like having clear-cut values, that helps you so much in the pursuit of those goals because then you know why you want to achieve whatever that goal is.
Why.
Yeah, why? Like the intention behind what you want to do.
And that integrity will keep you from compromising your values.
Yeah.
So when somebody comes in and they're really trying to sabotage you, acting like they're trying to put you on, saying, "Hey man, just sell this, you can be boom." But if you got your integrity, you're like, "Nah, man." You got your values, you're like, "Nah, man."
100%. Yeah.
And that why makes you go after every failure.
Yeah.
Every time you miss, every time you don't get it how you want to get it, the why make you adjust and adapt. The why, when you do the why and you put your goals, and you end up exceeding your goals. Like you say, once you got them, but it's built on some deep why, then it's bigger than that one goal.
It's like the brother, I know we're about to close out here shortly, but a brother called yesterday, right?
Yeah.
From prison.
Yeah.
And he asked me, he said, what can we do to get some of these laws passed? And I said, go back and ask the brothers, why do you want out of prison? And when you can answer that question, then you can push forward, right? And the thing is, it's like, obviously everybody wants out. I took a vacation down to Vegas a few months ago, and I was like, man, I don't want to go back, right? But if you're in prison, obviously you want out, right? But you really got to ask yourself, why do you want out? I know when I was in there, I said, I want out so I can help the community. I want out so I can build a family. I want out so I can own my own home, right? So why do you want out? It can't just be because I want out of prison. It has to be because I want to do something. And what is that? What is that thing that you want to do? What is it that you want to accomplish? What is it that you want to strive for, right? Have that purpose, have that vision. And that's what I believe when we work as a collective, as a community, when we got young brothers like this looking way sharper than me up here. Come on, right? Hey, man, he's the future, right? I mean, you know, I'm praising you because I want you to continue the same, man. You know what I mean? When I was your age, when he was your age, we were in prison.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Your future is looking promising, especially with the trauma that you experienced. So I personally like to thank all the listeners, all the viewers, and I'll let you guys quickly close out because we only got a few seconds left.
Oh yeah, sure. Thank you for this opportunity, Rainier Avenue Radio, Anthony and Blaze. It's been amazing.
Absolutely. Shout out to Rainier Avenue Radio for giving us this platform to just authentically be ourselves. You know, it's a blessing. I'm grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, true voice of the community. Thank you all.
Peace.
And thanks to all the listeners.
Thank you for listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world, our special broadcast, Blacklash. Hope you enjoyed this. I know you did. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your incredible stories with us and sharing this experience of Black history. Again, we are not one monolithic, homogenous group of people. And what we're doing here at Rainier Avenue Radio is giving you a comprehensive overview of the Black experience. It's many things. It's day-to-day life. Of course, it's history as well. And history is made every day. Coming up next, we'll have John Yasutake. They'll be doing their, on Seattle Here and Now, and they will be doing their Black History Month review. At 8 o'clock, we're taking it back to the old school. You know, there was a period of time in the 80s and 90s when the DJs weren't calling it old school. We're claiming that because it became part of our heritage, this phrase, old school. So we're going to have some of the DJs here who played the house parties back in the 80s, playing the music that made it old school, what we now refer to as old school. And we'll continue our Black History Month celebration on Saturday with an exhibit from Black Wall Street. We are going to have actual artifacts and memorabilia from Tulsa. A couple of descendants of Tulsa will be here as well. You'll have the opportunity to hear their stories. Look, you're not going to find this information that they're going to share with you in any books. You're not going to hear it in school. You're going to hear actual commentary, call it kitchen table talk, that was shared with the ancestors of those who survived. And not a lot of people did. Yeah. So if you're unfamiliar with Black Wall Street, which was at one point called the Tulsa Race Riot, which they switched to the Tulsa Massacre, because that's what it was. It was a community of 600 businesses, hospitals, lawyers, doctors, juke joints, you name it, pharmacies. It was all those who made goods. As a matter of fact, people came from all around this community that built itself to be self-sustaining out of necessity. So tune in and find out more. Come down and visit us from 12 to noon. From noon to 5. We'll also have a Black Vendors Fair. So you'll be able to turn money back over into the community by purchasing from Black business owners who will have vendor space right here in the Columbia City Theater, and we will be broadcasting that live. That's it. That's all the time I have. Thank you again for joining us. It's me, Tony B, saying remember, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you are probably right. I'm out. Peace.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time.